Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a close look at a specific stack of source materials that just landed. These are recent updates straight from the SORA ecosystem, covering May 2025.
That's right, and there's quite a bit here.
Yeah, so our mission really is to unpack these notes together, pull out what seems most interesting, most important, and just help you get a really clear picture of what's been happening in the SORA world lately.
We've got everything from, token mechanics to core infrastructure stuff, and even some real-world government interaction mentioned.
It is definitely a lot to chew on. Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start? Maybe with the token news. That seemed pretty immediate.
Sounds good. Yeah, the sources highlight a significant update that happened back on Thursday, May 22nd.
Okay, what was that?
It involved the SORA token XOR and also the SORA token bonding curve dollar. TBCD. You might know that one as XOR Redback. Basically, it was a repackaging.
A repackaging. So what did that actually mean for users?
Well, the source notes explain they changed the denomination. So what used to be, say, 100 old XOR is now represented as just one new token. They've labeled it 100x XOR to make it clear.
Ah, okay. Like a stock split almost, but just changing the unit.
Kind of, yeah. And the TBCD got the same treatment, so it's now 100x SOR TBC dollar.
And the reason for this, was it technical?
Apparently purely practical. The sources say it's just to make reading and inputting token amounts easier, more intuitive, especially on the UI when you're dealing with potentially large numbers or lots of decimal places.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Handling tiny fractions can get messy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A user interface simplification, really.
And here's a crucial detail the source points out, especially for you listening, if you hold XOR outside the SORA network itself.
Right. This change, it only affects assets that are within the SORA network.
So if your XOR is sitting on, say, Ethereum or another chain...
Totally unaffected. It stays as it is in the old denomination until you decide to bridge it over to SORA.
But what happens when you bridge it? This is interesting.
Yeah, the updates say when you do bridge those tokens from another network into SORA, they don't stay in the old format. They get automatically converted to the new 100x denomination upon arrival.
Oh, that's handy. So it simplifies things automatically if you're bringing assets into the ecosystem.
Seems like it. Good news if you manage assets across different networks and want to consolidate on SORA.
Okay, so that's a practical change, maybe a necessary housekeeping thing. But the source materials also go deeper, right, into the foundational work.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the core infrastructure. SORA v3 development is really moving forward according to these notes.
V3, and the key concept there seems to be this. Hubchain architecture.
Exactly. That's central to v3. The updates really emphasize it.
And what's its role? Is it like the base layer?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's designed as the core foundation for v3. Think of it as a unified, very scalable platform. Its main job is to let all these different financial systems talk to each other securely and efficiently on SORA.
Different financial systems.
Wow.
Like what?
Well, this is a key insight from the source material. The Hubchain is specifically designed so that both centralized players, like governments, central banks, and decentralized platforms can work together seamlessly.
Okay, that is interesting. So it's not an either thing. It's trying to be a bridge.
Right. The strategy seems to be fostering innovation, getting the benefits of decentralization, but also accommodating a kind of control, compliance, and frankly, scale that big institutions need.
And how does building this specific kind of setup connect back to SORA's wider goals?
Well, the source material presents this architecture as essential for achieving those goals. Things like strengthening system resilience, so you're less dependent on any single national system.
Right.
It also helps preserve economic sovereignty, apparently, by letting local entities keep control. And, of course, enabling global financial inclusion by providing this common interoperable infrastructure.
And what can it actually do, this Hubchain?
If the source lists capabilities like creating assets, handling secure private transactions, and making things work across different networks. Interoperability, all crucial for that bigger vision.
So why should you, the listener, care about all this V3 and Hubchain technical stuff?
Because it's the plumbing, essentially. It's the vital infrastructure being built now for what comes next, those robust, future-proof financial applications.
And there's a direct link back to that token repackaging we talked about.
Yes, the source notes explicitly connect this V3 design to addressing limitations, not just in old financial systems, but also in older blockchain designs. They even point out that it addresses the kind of technical gaps that, well, made the XOR repackaging necessary in the first place.
Ah, so it's about building a more solid, adaptable foundation this time around.
Exactly. Building it right from the ground up to hopefully avoid those kinds of fundamental changes down the line.
Okay, building something like that sounds like a massive undertaking. How do they even test it? The sources mention the Fujiwara Testnet.
Yeah, Fujiwara is live, and it's key for V3 development. It's the main playground, the testing environment where they're constantly rolling out and testing new SORA V3 features, trying to simulate the real world before it hits the main network.
And the source says you can actually get involved.
It does. It mentions there's a tutorial on the SORA wiki if you want to join the testnet and, help kick the tires on these new features yourself.
And it's connected to Hyperledger Iroha. What's the significance of that?
Right. The testnet uses Hyperledger Iroha, and the insight there is that Iroha is known as an open-source blockchain platform, really focused on enterprise uses, things like regulatory compliance, digital asset management.
Which fits perfectly if SORA wants to work with institutions and governments.
Exactly. They're building on a foundation that's already kind of recognized in those circles. Plus, since Iroha is open source, developers can actually start playing with it, maybe even building Iroha-based apps right now.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about the tools users interact with more directly? Security, wallets, the sources mentioned activity there too.
Definitely. Starting with security. Specifically on Polkaswap, that's the DX in the SORA ecosystem, a major update highlighted is adding a multi-signature feature right into the Polkaswap user interface.
Multi-Sig, how does that actually help a user?
Well, it's a big security boost. It lets you protect your funds by requiring, say, multiple different signatures, maybe from different keys you hold or even different people before a transaction can go through.
So not just one key controls everything.
Exactly. And if you're using the Fearless Wallet plugin, the system apparently handles gathering those signatures in what they call a trustless way.
Trustless.
Yeah.
Meaning you don't have to rely on one central party to manage it.
Precisely. The network itself validates based on the rules you set up, reduces the risk of a single point of failure or someone acting badly in the middle.
That sounds really useful, especially for like team funds, DAO treasuries, or even just an individual wanting extra security with multiple devices.
Absolutely. Big step up.
Yeah.
And the source adds another practical touch. These multi-sig transactions can have expiry time set, meaning if all the required signatures aren't collected and submitted by a certain deadline, the transaction just automatically cancels.
Oh, smart. Prevents old, maybe forgotten transactions hanging around.
Yeah, stops them potentially being exploited later.
Okay, so that's Polkaswap security. What about SORA wallets themselves? The source seemed to emphasize those.
Yes, the update really stresses that SORA sees wallets as critical infrastructure. They use this phrase, new economic order, and say self-custody is absolutely key to that. They state a strong commitment to keep improving the wallet experience.
New economic order. That sounds ambitious. What do you think they mean by that based on the context?
Reading between the lines of the source material, it points to a vision where people and, entities have full sovereign control over their digital money and how they interact. Less reliance on traditional banks just to hold your assets or make basic payments.
So self-custody isn't just an option. It's fundamental to their whole model.
It seems that way. Foundational to empowering people and letting them participate in this new framework they're building.
And there was a little teaser about something innovative for developers using the wallet.
Yeah, the source hints at a special version of the SORA wallet being worked on, specifically for builders. It's described as supporting an innovative use case, the likes of which you have never seen before in the cryptocurrency space. Very intriguing phrasing.
But no details yet.
Nope. They mention a code of silence, so details are under wraps for now. But the way they highlight it, definitely something to watch for in future updates. Suggests they're pushing boundaries on what a wallet can do.
Very interesting. Okay, self-custody is core, but we all know you sometimes need to interact with the traditional finance world. Euros, dollars.
Yep. That brings us to the SORA Card, right?
Exactly. The SORA Card is built for that specific bridge, letting users deal with traditional systems like paying in euros, but keeping self-custody of their crypto as much as possible behind the scenes.
And there was a recent functional update there.
Yes, a pretty significant one according to the source. The crypto to UUR exchange feature is now live right inside the SORA Card app. Ah, okay. So you can swap directly in the app now. Which cryptos for euros?
The source, quite a few major ones. USDC, ETH, BTC, XRP, and it says other top tokens too are supported for direct swapping into EUR.
What about swapping XRR itself in the card app?
That's noted as coming in a future release. For now, the card's key function is really providing that seamless experience, managing assets across both worlds, crypto and fiat. It lets you essentially spend your crypto value even where SORA isn't directly accepted by converting to fiat on the fly.
Makes sense. Okay, so beyond the core tech and the user tools, what about the wider ecosystem? Builders, community projects, the sources touched on that too.
They did. They mentioned the ongoing sort of fundamental research collaboration between the SORA team and the Hyperledger Iroha 2 team, specifically about the Hubchain architecture. They call it building the free chain to connect these next-gen economies. So that deep work is continuing.
And updates from specific projects actually building on SORA?
Yeah, a few are highlighted. AIDR, for instance, is noted as just continuously pushing out updates and improvements for their app.
Okay.
Ceres, another project, has apparently been busy fixing specific things on Ceres tools, like making sure the XOR TBCD price sync is right, squashing some Apollo bugs, and they remind everyone their Demeter farming platform is live on SORA Shore for yield farming, integrated right into Polkaswap.
Any others get a mention?
All Matrix updates are apparently happening through a test bot and a dedicated Telegram group for testing new features.
And what's interesting here, and the source points this out, is how the community fits into all this development.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize SORA's governance model. It allows the community to actually submit development proposals. And more than that, the community can directly influence which proposals get prioritized and move forward via referendums.
So your input, if you're a community member, actually matters in shaping where the network goes next.
That's the idea presented, yes.
Yeah.
Direct influence.
Now, let's pull back again. How does all this tech development, this ecosystem building, how does it connect to the real world? The sources gave some pretty compelling examples, especially around institutions, governments.
Right, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. And it shows the tangible side of that V3 work we discussed, that Fujiwara Testnet.
Okay.
It's not just for internal tech checks.
Okay.
The team, leveraging their expertise from SORA, the company behind SORA, is actively using it to work directly with ministries of finance and central banks.
Wow. During the testnet phase, what's the goal of engaging at that level so early?
Well, they're collaborating on designing key aspects, like the transaction fee model, trying to make it work, make it attractive for big institutional players like central banks, while also making sure it benefits the SORA community.
So building with potential large-scale users in mind right from the start.
Exactly. It's like designing for that institutional adoption from day one.
And the sources show this isn't just talk, right? There are actual examples.
Yes, concrete examples. It highlights that the SORA community, or rather, SORA using the core tech, is already working with governments on real-world use cases.
So
it specifically cites Palau investing in blockchain infrastructure for savings bonds. And, perhaps more significantly, Papua New Guinea's central bank has completed a CBDC trial, a central bank digital currency trial, specifically using SORA's technology, the same tech that powers SORA.
Wow. Okay, seeing a national central bank actually trialing this kind of decentralized tech framework, that really speaks to that Hubchain goal of bridging centralized and decentralized systems.
It absolutely does. It shows that this idea, integrating decentralized infrastructure with national financial systems, isn't just a concept on paper. It's being actively explored, built, and tested right now using the capabilities SORA and SORA provide.
Okay, so finally, let's just quickly circle back to SORA's core mission. The About SORA section in the source material gives a sense of the underlying philosophy.
Right. It describes SORA as an innovative, adaptive monetary framework. And it specifically highlights that it's non-debt-based.
Non-debt-based. For someone listening, what does that practically mean in this context?
Well, unlike traditional systems where money often gets created through lending or fractional reserves, SORA's model, particularly with its token bonding curve and tokenomics, tries a different approach. The idea, as presented, is to link the value and supply of its token more directly to productive economic activity happening within the network itself, rather than having it fundamentally based on debt issuance.
And the main goal of building this specific type of system?
According to the source, the big picture goal is facilitating economic stability. And there's a particular focus mentioned: providing robust financial infrastructure for countries that might be financially vulnerable.
So, using blockchain for development and stability.
That seems to be the core aim. The sources emphasize its significance, suggesting SORA shows blockchain's potential for a more inclusive, more stable global financial system. They position it as playing a key role in evolving global finance by supporting economies in need. And they cite its integration in things like that Bokolo Cash CBDC trial as a practical example of this mission in action.
Okay, so let's try and put all this together. What have we seen from these May updates? We've covered the practical token repackaging, which itself hinted at the need for deeper architectural changes.
Right. Then the fundamental work on the V3 hub chain, explicitly designed to connect centralized and decentralized finance.
We looked at security upgrades like Polkaswap's Multi-Sig and how wallets are seen as central to this new economic order idea focused on self-custody.
Steps towards easier fiat integration with the SORA Card updates.
Ongoing work in the builder ecosystem, community governance, and then these really crucial steps towards institutional and government adoption, with central banks actually trialing the underlying technology.
Yeah, quite a range.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? This deep dive into the source material suggests an ecosystem that's really pushing forward on many different fronts at once.
Definitely. It seems they're aiming for both that deep technical sophistication with V3 and real-world relevance, building infrastructure specifically designed to integrate with, maybe even improve upon, existing financial systems.
All while holding on to those principles of decentralization and self-custody.
That seems to be the balancing act they're attempting.
Okay. Well, as always, remember, this has been our deep dive into this specific set of source materials, trying to interpret the points raised by the SORA team and community. It's definitely not financial advice.
Absolutely. Always make sure you do your own research.
So here's something to maybe chew on after listening to all this. SORA is very explicitly designing infrastructure, that hub chain, to connect centralized financial systems, central banks, finance ministries, with decentralized ones. Thinking about the future of global finance, what do you see as the biggest potential benefits of that kind of integration becoming widespread? And on the flip side, what are the most significant challenges you foresee?
That's a great question to ponder. Lots to think about there.
Indeed. Stay curious and keep digging.